to the Futurebuild podcast, where we connect the ideas, people and solutions shaping a better built environment. I'm Martin Hurn, Event Director of Futurebuild, and this is episode 3 of our special Retrofit series, where we explore how we decarbonise the buildings we already have, not just the ones we're building tomorrow. Today, we're looking at one of the biggest challenges and shifts facing the sector, moving commercial buildings away from fossil fuels and embracing heat pumps as a proven, practical solution. Joining me is Ben Bartle-Ross, Senior Technical Trainer at Mitsubishi Electric. He's spent more than 20 years helping specifiers, consultants and contractors navigate this transformation. In this episode, we'll unpack the design and operational challenges that come with switching from gas to air source heat pumps, the supplier's role in guiding projects from that concept to delivery, and real-world lessons from standout case studies, including Bournemouth University's complex campus retrofit and the inspiring collaboration with Chester Zoo, where heat pumps are now helping endangered rhinos stay warm. We'll also explore the latest innovations in commercial heat pump technology and how Mitsubishi Electric is embedding sustainability, embodied carbon transparency and the circular economy at the heart of its approach. If you're working on a retrofit project and want practical ideas for future-proofing your buildings, this is the episode you won't want to miss. Ben, absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We always love to start these with finding out about yourself.
Okay.
I'd love to hear about your story. Now, you've been at Mitsubishi for almost 20 years.
It's just over 20 years
yeah.
for my sins.
So what got you into it and sort of, how's your role maybe changed at your time?
So I joined Mitsubishi Electric as a pre-sales engineer. So I was involved in a lot of the application side of things. Over the years, that role has changed to the point where I'm now a senior technical trainer. And the way that we deal with and the customers we deal with has definitely changed over the years. So I was very lucky to be involved with sort of the infancy of us starting to get into doing heat pumps to doing hot water, so air to water, shall we say. And I'd love to tell you it was all to do with us being very green. It's ended up like that, yeah. But that's not how the idea started. So the first beginnings of us doing air to water actually started off with a problem solution. Yes, I was very lucky to be involved in this. So what we had was a large gym chain turned around and said, what we really would like to do is have all that cooling that we're taking out of the building and recover it for using the hot water for the showers. So I said, what I would like to do is put a coil above your outdoor unit and draw off the heat. And we went, no, that's going to cause us issues. The fan's built to draw the air across that coil, not push across another coil. Right, okay, so let's play about some ideas. So what we did, one of our normal air conditioning units, indoor units, took off the coil, took off the fan, put a tube and tube heat exchanger on and stuck a pump on it. And we could get water up to about 45 degrees. Wow. But the important bit was we were taking that energy out of the gym, in idea, that you were taking out of the gym and putting outside as hot air when it's doing cooling. Instead, you're transferring off to do hot water. And in idea, that hot water, theoretically, was coming from somebody training really hard in the gym. Yeah? In idea, they were producing enough heat for their own showers, theoretically. It doesn't quite balance out like that, but the idea was there. Yeah? So that was where it came from. Because all we're doing here with any form of heat pump is you're just moving energy from A to B. Yeah? Yeah? And I'm very lucky to say that my role over the years within Mitsubishi Electric, I've kind of ended up following this. So I was involved with the application of how it's all going to work. I was very lucky to be involved in some of the prototyping of it as well. But I've also been involved when we started moving from doing large heat pumps to doing more domestic side of things and getting my head around that as well. Yeah. So it's strange. We started off with commercial, then we went down to domestic, and then we come back to doing bigger commercial again. So and my role within Mitsubishi Electric has kind of followed along that line of doing pre-sales. Then I became a technical trainer. Yeah. And then from there became a senior technical trainer. So let's break down that role, of senior technical trainer. Who are you training? What's the sort of, and I suppose, where's those big, those big needs in training as well? Yeah. So the people I train first off, customers. So that's to people like installers and things like that. But also, I'm involved with the training of staff as well. So new starters quite often coming to me. And it's a big mix. So if somebody's fast as staff training goes, we've got engineers who I'm going to be training up, but I might also have somebody else who says, I just need to have an overview of what this business is. I've only just started. What's it all about? So it's quite often it's just the basics of how refrigeration and air conditioning and heat pumps work.
Yeah.
So it's a big range on there. With the customers we're training, that's a nice big mix. So I said we've got air conditioning where we're doing training of installers. Sometimes we get involved with main contractors, sometimes get involved with consultants. So it's all the way up. On the heating side, sometimes we deal with air conditioning engineers who are changing over and doing some of the heating side, who say, or specifically air to water, should we say. But I'm also dealing with, should we say, heating engineers or plumbers, but they don't always like being called plumbers, who are changing over from doing gas boilers to, what's this new technology? I want to be involved now, heat pumps work. Which to me all seems a bit strange, because they always go, this new technology. I'm thinking, I've been doing this for about 18 years doing air to water. This isn't new. But it's interesting how it's perceived by the industry still. This is new. It's actually not. The idea of producing hot water from a refrigeration circuit isn't a new idea. The idea came about a good 50, 60 years ago.
I think, we use the term now low carbon solutions, and I think that's probably the sort of the new rebrand for the the traditional solutions that you've got. Now, this podcast is part of our Retrofit mini series where I'm focusing purely on that. And we brought you on because I wanted to focus on the commercial retrofit side of things as well. I'd love to talk about or get your insights into maybe what are some of the unique challenges when you're taking some of these, and commercial properties are big properties as well. And they've got a big challenge at the moment of, almost eradicating their use of fossil fuels, and moving to the low carbon solutions. I'd love to sort of probe into some of those unique challenges.
Okay. So some of the first challenges is perception. One of the myths I quite often hear is you can only use heat pumps on well-insulated buildings and they must be new. That's not the case. It's just a way of producing heat. You might have to scale up the size of it to deal with, say, for example, like, say, a listed building where you can't do much to the actual structure of the building. Is it still doable? Yes. You just could probably end up with a bigger heat pump. But as much as possible, we're always trying to work on the idea of lean, mean, green. What can we do with the building to make it so it doesn't need so much energy? Green, that's where we're talking about using heat pumps. So lean, mean, green. So I got the wrong way around there. And the green bit where you're taking the energy from. So one of the biggest differences is you're going to go from, say, a fossil fuel system. Say they've got big old gas boilers. And you're going to go from these gas boilers to using heat pumps, potentially. Some form of electrification. Now, if you take out, say, 3,000 kilowatts of gas boiler, because it's a big property, it's very unlikely that you're going to need 3,000 kilowatts of heat pump, because you're going from a burst technology to something that's much more of a quiet trickle. So we're finding it's anything between half to even maybe down to a third of the amount of energy required to actually keep the building at the correct temperature. So one of the first things we're doing is actually analysing the building, going over it properly, going, how much do you actually need? So that's going through the heat loss calculations, making sure it's getting exactly what we need based on the conditions we're looking at. So as an industry, what we're quite bad for doing is going, right, we'll just take a standard. We'll use SIBs, which is good. It's a good starting point. And then people just blanket carry on rather than going, but what does this building specifically need? What were the temperatures like last year? How cold did it really get? And just go through those calculations a bit more. But also maybe it's a point of going, if we're going to take out those gas boilers and we're going to put these heat pumps in, why don't we look at the building first? How can we make it so the building doesn't need as much energy to start off with? Because that's obviously going to make your operational expenditure cheaper. Might be a bit more upfront, a bit more capital expenditure. But okay, what we're going to do is we're going to look at, say, maybe how the roof is being lined, things like that, the walls, and things like that. And then the lovely one that happens, because electrification, is quite often get a situation, like we were just discussing before we started the podcast, of if we're going to fit this technology, we're talking about electrification, maybe we should produce our own power. Yeah, maybe we put PV panels in place. How else can we make this cheaper to run? Yeah. So one kind of leads onto the other. It's almost like heat pumps, almost like a lead into doing other technologies. Yeah. So you quite often find, right, we're going to do heat pumps. Actually, we're going to put PV on there. Or actually, we're going to put batteries in because the PV is not producing power when we actually want it. So we need to be able to move around when it's all going on.
I'd love to touch on a few points you made there, especially around how commercial buildings are very different to the domestic sector. And they've got some unique characteristics. One of those, and you mentioned yourself, is almost dealing with energy bursts. You have high intensity times, or periods of energy use, and then no energy use. I'd love to sort of, get a question around how you deal with that.
So one of the things we discussed right at the beginning, so this is all at design stage, is looking at, say, where you're saying about, right, we're going to have a high usage of water at this time during the day. So what we need to do is we need to increase the size of our heat pumps to be able to deal with that. Or you just move where we're actually doing that work. So where we can do that is having something like buffer vessels in between.
Right.
So we're going to need this X amount of hot water for the kitchens, for example. Well, we don't need to make it all at once. We could do it over the next 4 hours leading up to that. And therefore, I don't need to have such large heat pumps. So it's just that looking at things in the bigger picture. Yeah. But also it leads into, do you need such big heat pumps? But also it means you're going to need less plant space. Because one of the things that's going to happen is you are going to need to find a space for these heat pumps to go. They're taking their energy from the air outside. Therefore, it's going to be easier if they're in a compound area that's got decent airflow. Yeah? Because that's where we're going to be stealing the energy from. So one kind of leads to the other. This is all about the planning stage, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we're having that first conversation, was going, right, we're going to go down this heat pump route. Right, where? Where are you going to put this? Yeah, we're going to put it on a roof. Right. Is your roof big enough? Has it got enough strength to the roof to take these extra heat pumps going on there? Then we just don't want to catch anyone off guard. We're just being open and honest. It's about transparency. We just want everything to work correctly.
I'd love to sort of touch on maybe, I'm going to touch in a minute on the role of Mitsubishi and especially, in that planning stage, because that's quite complex. You're not just a supplier, and I want to touch on that in a minute. Before we get onto that, though, I want to talk about maybe some of the drivers that's moving people, especially on these large commercial projects, away from the fossil fuels. We talked off camera a lot around the sort of EPC ratings, especially in office buildings at the moment, especially around those sort of, stranded assets. I'd love to talk about that as a driver and maybe the role then that heat pumps and that technology plays in that. But also, what other factors are driving people at the moment as well?
So yes, the first one you picked up today is quite right, is stranded assets. So where you are having a situation where you can't rent out the building because the energy rating's too low. And heat pumps are a very easy way of getting that energy rating up to somewhere to the point where you can actually start letting the property out again. Because all the time it's a stranded asset, you've got no money coming in for that. That's a big problem. Yeah, so that's where the key, one of the key drivers. Other key drivers can be very interesting. So quite often it's about how a company wants to be perceived. Yeah, what are you doing to be greener?
On their ESG.
Yeah, exactly. What are you giving back to this planet almost? Yeah, so it's almost bigger picture stuff.
Yeah.
So that I have this conversation a lot with, usually with quite large businesses, without naming names. Yeah. It's the ones who are worried about the corporate social responsibility. Yeah. Other reasons for it is we've got the drive for net zero. So the government's making it very clear where we need to be heading towards. And there's all kinds of reasons behind that because our government wants us to be greener. We also need to think about energy security. Yeah. We need to think about where we're getting these fossil fuels from. And is that really a good idea long term? We'd do much better to be able to produce our power for this country in other ways. And electrification seems like the most obvious and easiest route to that. And that is definitely where we're heading towards. So it's almost like saying to everybody, you need to get on board because we are going this direction. And we have got a solution for you. Is it going to suit everybody? No. That's where things get interesting.
Yeah. there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, around the use of heat pumps, and one of those, and maybe this is quite prevalent for the commercial sector, is around the heat water as well, especially where obviously commercial properties have a very different regulations than to domestic.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So when it comes to hot water, it's probably the most interesting one, in that when we do domestic properties, to get rid of Legionnaire's disease, which is usually what we're worried about here, so we've got bodies of water we're going to store for doing hot water side of things. For domestic, it's 60 degrees or thereabouts for 2 or 3 minutes, job done. When it comes to commercial, for some strange and interesting reason, we suddenly say it needs to be 70. Now, it doesn't sound like a big jump, but when you're looking at heat pumps, that can be quite a big jump. From 60 to 70 degrees, there are limitations on certain refrigerants, to the point where we are looking at using different refrigerants to achieve that 70 degrees easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, and more efficiently and more effectively. So on our earlier versions of our heat pumps, it was like, yeah, we can get up to around about sort of 45, 50 degrees. So that meant you had to have an immersion heater, take it from 50 up to 70 as required. That's not a great way of doing things, because you're going from having this heat pump where you put in 1 kilowatt in, you're getting 4 or 5 kilowatts out, to an immersion heater where you're putting 1 in, you get 1 out. Yeah? So the newer heat pumps we keep on playing about with are easily achieving the 70 degrees. Yeah? Achieving temperatures up to 80, 90 degrees.
Oh, wow.
So we've gone beyond the marker quite easily. Yeah? But again, it's all about listening to customers. What problems are they having? What solutions do they need?
Brilliant. I want to come back to, I think we alluded to this point about the role of the supplier within retrofit and within successful retrofit as well. What you've described is, especially when you're taking on a large commercial project, is the need to be involved at the planning stage. So I'd love you to sort of understand really sort of how do you achieve that, who you're working with, and is there a resistance to bringing in a supplier at those stages as well?
Yes, there is definitely a resistance to it. And I think, I'm going to be honest with you, the reason we made this decision about how to help the customers get to the solution is because we saw the problems. So, of a heat pump getting installed without anyone speaking to us, and then we get the phone call going, it's not reaching temperature, your kit's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. And at which point you're going in there going, right, okay, A, the heat pump's not big enough, B, your pipework's undersized, and C, you haven't got enough water flow to do the job in the first place. That sounds quite straightforward, but that's a lot of work to be done on site now to try and get them to a solution that should work. Yeah? It's much easier to get it right to start off with. So we took on that responsibility, because the outcome was, to start off with, Mitsubishi Electric heat pump doesn't work. And that was not the case. It had been misapplied and incorrectly designed. So we were stepping up and going, right, how do we deal with that solution? Yeah. So get involved with it right from the get-go, right from the beginning, and then it does go according to plan. We should be the point of excellence. We should be the people come to. Yeah, because in that possible way, at the end of it, it's got Mitsubishi Electric logo on the side of it. Yeah. That is my responsibility. We know where we want quality standards wise. So how can we influence that? So we get involved with architects. We're involved with, spend quite a bit of time with the consultants to help them to get the design correct. So almost going to them going, we know you've got this project coming up. You've discussed it with us. Let us take responsibility for that design. We'll go through and make sure it's all correct. Admittedly, design liability still lies with the consultant, but we're there holding their hand the whole way through and explaining why we've made the decisions we've made.
And that's an M&E consultant, is it?
Yeah. And then when it comes down to the main contractor, again, we're discussing that with them, because what we get worried about sometimes is things get value engineered sometimes. Yeah. And I understand it. I understand where they're coming from. But at the same time, kind of going, that bit can be value engineered. No, you need to have some way of getting air out of the system. Yeah, so there's literally a conversation I was actually having with a customer the other day, and they were saying, well, we've done this and we've done this, but we don't think we actually need drain points. And I'm going, you don't need drain points if there's nothing on the site is ever going to change. Do you think things might change on site? Yes, then you need to have drain points.
Right.
Yeah? And it's almost like leading people through that decision making, especially when you talk about cost analysis side of things. And they're going, how can we take some more money out of this job? Yeah. Well, we can't do it here, here, and here because these are critical.
Yeah.
Yeah. But until you can explain to somebody and give them that transparency of what you're trying to get to, it's a tough conversation to have sometimes. Yeah. But we also influence it right down to literally the installers.
Yeah.
And so that everybody understands how the process really works, how the kit really works. Yeah. Because I would love to have a situation where the installer is so confident that when they turn up on site, they can look at the consultant's drawings or main contractor's drawings and go, this is correct, this is correct, this is correct. Actually, I think you've missed something off here. And I'd love that because then it starts that conversation rather than saying it's all done and fitted now. But when it doesn't work because somebody's missed something at the beginning, I don't want that. I'd like to have a situation where they can actually say, this isn't correct. And then at least the consultant can come back and go, actually it is because we're doing this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Yeah, for example, it might be a situation where they say, well, the consultant hasn't said they're going to put anything form of glycol in the system. How are we going to protect that pipework if it was to all get very cold and there'd be no power? Well, I thought of that. We're not going to use glycol, we're going to use trace heating, and I've got backup batteries to run in the trace heating. Good, because we've had that conversation and everybody understands. That's a healthy way to be.
So if I'm listening to this and, I'm an architect and, I've got a huge commercial retrofit project coming on, I need to install, heat pumps. I'll look at that. Who is it that's contacting you? Or in an ideal situation, how are you being embedded into my project team?
So we have consultant account managers throughout the country. So that's what their job is. Yeah, they don't get involved in the installation side of things. All they're involved is being part of that applications team.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's a strange little nuance because in idea I'm going to say something they're not going to like, they're involved in sales.
Yeah.
But they're really influencing things at design stage. And that's what their job is. They're there to try and help everybody get things correct.
Yeah.
Because then everything goes according to plan.
Yeah. I'm always intrigued as sort of how long does it, what's the sort of time frame? And I know there's no easy on this, but this could be years, couldn't it? From consultancy to specification to installation?
Yes. Yeah. It could be easily 2 or 3 years between, that first design to actually it's all done and fitted.
Wow.
But I've had before now, it'd be a good 5 or 6 years. Yeah. So we're involved in a job called Kingston Heights. That was in the middle of London. We used the Thames as a heat source for doing what we were doing. That took time because there was a lot of nuances to it and a lot of things that had to just be checked. If we're going to use the Thames as a heat source, you need to do some checking beforehand.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's on board with us, everyone's happy before we sign off on anything. And we literally held everyone's hands the whole way through that. Go, look, we're here for you. Whatever you need, we've got the information for you.
Wow. So I want to actually, you'll be pleased to hear I'm fully prepped. So, but there's some really fascinating case studies that I want to sort of probe into because I think they each show some unique challenges. And I think the first one is around Bournemouth University. Now that's a huge project. 17,000 students, 2,000 staff, and they had a bold aim to cut their emissions by 50% across all scopes by 2030. Love to sort of how they went about that and how you work with them to sort of start that journey.
So we're obviously involved right at the design stage. So having that first conversation, here's the goal we need to get to. Right, how can we help provide that solution for you? I think one of the first things that came up was, right, okay, how much does the building need? Is there anything we can do to the structure of the building so it doesn't need as much energy to start off with? Then it was, right, we need to have this amount of space for heat pumps. Where are we going to put them? Is it going to go on top of the building? Are we going to have the heat pumps right beside the building? What they actually decided, an area that was originally for a bicycle park, they moved where the bicycle park was, and then built a compound area to one side of the building so they could separate it all off.
Yeah.
And where they had a plant room where they did have the gas boilers originally, that's now got 3 sets of buffer vessels in there with all the pipe work and pumps and everything else in there. What I really like about what Bournemouth University did was, first off, they were very open with Mitsubishi Electric and they let us come in and do plenty of filming. So it's a really nice one. They let me come in and do filming during the actual beginnings of the install,
Right.
and then at the end of the install. So it was really good to be able to see how it's growing and changing. Yeah. Another thing they did was they did a lot of measurements. So they measured how much energy the building needed to start off with. Yeah. And then they measured it again at the end of the project, going, you told us you use this amount of energy, you produce this amount of heat. Prove it. So they've got all the water meters and heat meters, electrical meters all in place. So they can say, look, we can actually see in real time how much energy this heat pumps, along with the pumps, along with everything else involved in it, is actually taking, and how much heat we're actually producing for the building. I'm very pleased to say it's gone exactly according to plan. Yeah, but I like that. I like having that honest conversation, because in our product catalogue, we will say, you have a coefficient performance of 350%, or 3.5 CRP. That's great. 1 kilowatt in, 3.5 kilowatts out. Brilliant. But what's that like in real life? I'm very pleased to say Bournemouth University is actually better than we even said. But that's all affected by how we worked with consultants to get that design right.
Yeah.
And some of the decisions that Bournemouth University made. We're not going to keep the radiators. We're going to change over to underfloor heating. Great. Yeah. That means I can reduce the flow temperature because you're going to bigger heat emitters. All adds up. Yeah. And they had some nice short pipe runs that made my life easy. Yeah.
I've been reading through the case study. What's struck out to me was that it showed some of the complexities of these large-scale commercial projects, because in essence, we're dealing with a university. You're dealing with a site that's open. It's got specialist labs. It's got a business school. It needs reliability. A lot of people are paying a lot of money to go there during that time, and also it needs as minimal disruption as possible.
Yes.
Love to talk about how you got through some of those unique challenges.
They were very thoughtful with us to start off with, and understood there would be a little bit of disruption, and how we could minimise that. So part of the idea of having that plant space to one side was actually to try and minimise disruption, so we can do all the work here without disturbing anyone else. When they were sizing the heat pumps, they went for 2 or 3 more heat pumps than theoretically they needed.
Right.
So that's naturally building some contingency in there. So worst case scenario, heat pump was to go into fault, another heat pump would cut in and take up the load. It's going to be flagged through to their BMS system to tell them they've got a problem. Yeah. It could be lovely to turn around and say, our kit never ever has an issue. Yeah. The reality is things can and do go wrong on site, so you plan for it. Yeah. And I'm very pleased to say CHV units are very robust. However, I do live in the real world, and we just need to make sure, as you say, there are critical parts of that building that have got to be kept at great temperature. And the other side of things is that they actually run both systems for a little while.
Okay.
So they kept some of the gas boilers in part of the building to start off with. So there were certain bits that, shall we say, are mission critical within Bournemouth University. And it was very helpful. They had basically a set of valves in there. Right, are we ready? Clunk, over goes the valve. Right, from now on, we're running on the heat pumps, and we can start stripping other parts of the system out.
Brilliant.
But I say what I was very lucky with is that they let me come in and have a nose all the way through this. So I've used this for creating some of the training content for working on heat pumps. And I'm very lucky to say that they've let me do enough work on it that I actually created a virtual reality training course part of it.
Oh, wow.
So that you can actually, during the training, be in the plant area with me in Bournemouth to help you visualise what's going on. Because as engineers, we're quite visual people. So show me a plain photo, I can get some information from it. Put me in the environment so I can look around and see things, I will gather a lot more information. To the point where I put an engineer in there and said, look, have a nose, have a look around this. And I got to the end of it and said, okay, tell me how I would remove pump 3 from that first system and what tools you'd need. And they listed it off to me perfectly.
Wow.
So it was immersive enough that they could start planning in their heads what they're going to do, what they're going to need to remove, and what tools they're going to need for it.
Yeah.
To the point where I think he could have written a method statement and a risk assessment without even being at Bournemouth University. And that's what I wanted to get from Bournemouth University, from a training side of things.
Yeah. And that Dorset house, is going to become a template then that you're going to replicate across other buildings at Bournemouth University.
Yes.
Is that right? And you've been doing a lot of monitoring and sort of, optimizing in essence. Are there any lessons you can take from that you're going to do slightly different in the other buildings?
If I'm honest, I think a lot of it they got right. So I'm very pleased with it. I think the things they probably might take from it, they might set the pumps up maybe in a different way. So what they've got is moment of time, they've got a header with 3 heat pumps on each set of pumps. They might go to having 1 pump per heat pump just to give them slightly better efficiency and better control. However, at the same time, it has all gone according to plan.
Brilliant.
So they're happy with the outcome.
Fantastic.
Which, as an engineer, as an employee in Mitsubishi Electric, that's the perfect situation for me. A happy customer is what I'm after.
And actually, talking about happy customers, the next case study I want to bring up has got some unique customers some endangered rhinos. I'm not sure if you can tell if they're happy or not. But, this was quite a unique challenge, wasn't it? Your work at Chester Zoo.
Yes.
Tell us about this one.
So we have a very interesting relationship with Chester Zoo. So it's a little bit unusual. We've been doing a lot of work with Chester Zoo over a lot of years on heat pumps. So they have some of the normal domestic heat pumps actually doing some of the kitchen areas and restaurants already within Chester Zoo. We had a very interesting opportunity with Chester Zoo to use some of the CHV units for doing the actual rhino house and things like that. So this is a new part of Chester Zoo. They gave us an opportunity for us to test some of our newer heat pumps.
Oh, wow.
So we have a brand new unit. I'm not going to say too much about it because it's almost prototype, if that makes sense. So it's a prototype unit, but it's a couple more stages on from first concept. So this is a field trial. So let's do field trial work actually there. We were very confident already. We knew how the product worked, but there's so much you can do testing wise and so much you can do with it. We've done plenty of testing work over in Norway and Sweden before we brought it to the UK. But it was like, right, let's use it at Chester Zoo. Let's see how it runs.
Yeah.
Let's see how it works within the UK environment, which compared to Norway and Sweden is actually much easier. But we have situations where we do a lot more defrosting than they do in the very cold countries, because when it gets really cold, you haven't got so much moisture in the air. Whereas we have, a cold winter and we get down sort of -2, -5. Those are actually really good temperatures for making lots of ice on the coil. So it's a way of doing testing work. So we were very privileged that let us do that.
And obviously rhinos want to be kept very warm.
Yes, they do. Which again is a good way of doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You had that challenge. But also I imagine there's factors like noise as well that's a bit unique to a zoo environment.
Yes. So having a fairly quiet unit to start off with, the commercial units are louder than the domestic for some obvious reasons that they're doing a lot more work. Yeah. Most of the noise coming from most heat pumps is airflow. Now, helpfully with our heat pumps, the airflow heads straight upwards. So most of the noise follows the airflow. But at the same time, we don't want to be causing disturbance for the animals. We want a nice, calm, gentle environment for them, because then it's going to be best for the welfare of the animals.
We talked a little bit earlier about sort of working with stakeholders, whether, the architects, consultants, engineers. You obviously had a very different stakeholder to involve, not just the rhinos, but obviously the zoo sustainability team as well, which obviously have very clear objectives. They want, scope 1 and 2.
Yes.
How was that experience? How does that differ from a traditional, commercial retrofit project?
They almost led us down where we needed to go.
Oh, wow.
So that was what was very interesting. So because we'd already done some work with them, with some of the heat pumps already, this wasn't new for them. What the difference was the application was now a little bit different. So they needed to think about the nuances of that. And they showed enough understanding of how heat pump technology worked that they had confidence this is going to work. This wasn't like, we're not too sure. They'd already been down that route and already. And very luckily, we had a part of our team that did a lot of work with the sustainability team and spent a lot of time with the engineers on site and spent a bit of time with their maintenance engineers as well. Getting feedback from them. What's working, what's not working. What are you finding easy, what you're not finding easy. Is there anything we can do to help? Most of the time, it's just little education pieces. If you do this and this, you'll find it easier. Right, thank you.
Yeah.
But they were very amenable. They've been very thoughtful towards Mitsubishi Electric, and we try to reciprocate that whenever we can.
And the really good news is, and this is sort of, there's been a baby rhino born since then. So the environment that you've obviously created has been, natural, healthy, and
it's a good measurement, isn't it?
Yeah.
If the animals are procreating, they must be fairly comfortable.
That's fantastic, and hitting their carbon goals, of course.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the other thing that Mitsubishi's been very honest about. Talk about carbon goals. Is also we talk about, which most manufacturers don't, is about the embodied carbon. So it's not just about, what the carbon savings of going from having a fossil fuel system to having its heat pump, but also making that heat pump, that's going to take carbon to do that. But let's just be honest about it, yeah? So we've got documentation to explain, here's the embodied carbon of our product. So you can take into account for that as well. And that's, again, just about being open and honest.
And was that a reaction, or is that sort of, being proactive?
That was us being proactive.
Oh, wow.
So we were thinking ahead, going, this is where probably things are going to go in the future, rather than waiting for a customer to say, we need to take into account for this.
And then you scrabbling around.
Yes, it doesn't look good. No. And have something to say, well, give us a year, we'll have an answer.
Yeah,
well, if you tell somebody it's going to be a year before you have an answer, they'll go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Understandably. Instead, let's get ahead. Let's think ahead what people are going to be asking. So it was the understandable thing to do. And it's affected other things. So how can we reduce the embodied carbon requirements for our product? Well, let's look at how the manufacturing process goes. So we're putting things like lots more PV panels on top of our buildings that are factories, so we can start reducing that carbon there. There's all kinds of things. What refrigerants you're using, how much refrigerant you're using, what materials you're using to actually make things like coils, fans. It all adds up. So the whole manufacturing process has been detailed, if that makes sense.
Wow. I'm going to come on to that in a minute, because I want to talk to you about sort of the circularity side of things as well. But there's one other case there I just want to quickly touch on before we go down that route, which was Exchange Quay, which is a huge estate in Manchester.
Yeah.
And I think, that posed the challenge of really decarbonising at scale, a massive scale. I mean, to give an idea, this is 116 square foot tower. It's an 8 to 10 story, building there. It's one of the largest office campuses in the Northwest. So huge, and they, and you needed to upgrade from EPC D to B without fully overhauling that HVAC system as well. So that must have been.
So it's unusual. Up till now, we've been mostly talking about doing heating, but either using underfloor heating or radiators and things like that. That's the sort of vertical ones we've been discussing. Key Exchange is slightly different. What they had in there, they've got what I would call a traditional fan core units, and where they've got water going through the fan core unit to do the heating or the cooling.
Oh, okay.
What they wanted to do there was they wanted to keep all those fan core units in place. So when they're looking at that whole retrofit, that's a major cost saving. Not having to rip all the indoor units out. Right, okay, let's just change what we're using as a heat source for doing the heating side. Let's take it from being gas boilers, where we had water coming from the gas boilers, to do those fan cool units, to using the CHV units to do that job instead. The thing we were very lucky with that particular job was the installers who were involved with talking to the consultants already understood a lot about how Mitsubishi Electric does things, and they understood quite a bit about how CHV units already work, because they'd already done work on it. So they built a bit of familiarity up with it. So they were the ones who theoretically came up with the ideas of, here's a problem, here's a solution. And then they came to Mitsubishi Electric and we went, yes, that's correct. You might need this, you might need that, and help them on that side of things. So it was actually, if I'm going to be honest with you, it was quite an easy one for us, because we had a Mitsubishi Electric fan already. Yeah, they were fans of us already. I know how that heat pump works. We can do that with that. Yeah, you can. Brilliant. And the helpful thing with that is, it's a big site, as you say. This is the guinea pig. They all knew it was going to work. They needed to prove it to those other stakeholders involved in that particular site. And it's just going to be a rolling on from that. What we've done there, can you please do with the rest of the other buildings now? Yeah.
Well, you had a big challenge, didn't you? Because just after, we had probably one of our coldest winters on record. So there's no better test than a freeze in Manchester.
Yes.
And did it pass?
It passed with flying colours.
Fantastic.
Yeah. We didn't know it was going to be fine, but at the same time, it's kind of like sitting there going, It's working, isn't it?
the extremes.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, and I think you sort of led on to this earlier, about sort of the innovation coming through, and that yes, heat pumps been around for a long time, but actually it is a space where there is a lot of innovation.
Yes.
So what does that look like at the moment? What are you excited about? Okay. Maybe give us a glimpse of the future.
Some of the things that are changing. We are playing about with new refrigerants. Well, we are playing about with refrigerants actually been around for a long time, but the way we're using it's changing. So one of the ones we're playing about is R290, better known as propane. So there's nuances to working with propane. Propane is very good at doing high temperatures. Okay, but the drawback is it's propane.
Yeah.
So we need to think about the risks involved in that and how we deal with that and mitigating those risks. So again, this is a lot of the conversation with the consultants, so we can get this right at the beginning. Yeah. We've also got heat pumps which are running on carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide as a refrigerant is really good at doing two things. It's good at doing very cold rooms, things like that, which we don't get involved in. And it's also very good at doing very hot water.
All right.
But it's not very good at doing the bits in between.
Right.
Okay. So we end up with situations quite often where they go, we're going to use the CHV units, which will do everything from sort of 35 right there up to sort of 60 odd, 70 odd, no problems at all. We'll use that for the heating. And then we're going to use your CO2 units for doing the specific needs, for doing hot water. So we had that with Manchester council offices. They go, right, we're going to have 10 of those CHV units to do the main heating for the building, and then we're going to have your Q unit, CO2 unit, for doing the hot water. So there's ways around things. The other thing that I'm seeing as changing is the control side of things.
Yeah.
Facilities managers are now getting to the point where we've gone from, look, Internet of Things, to actually they just expect it.
Yeah.
It's been teased, now we just want it as a normal. Yeah. I expect to be able to see how the heating system is working and be able to adjust it from anywhere in the world. So if you're looking after, say 15 sites throughout the country, the facilities manager expects to be able to see and be able to work on any of those without having to go to site. That's already in place. The next stage is the really fun bit. So we're playing about with artificial intelligence.
All right.
So another part of Mitsubishi called MiaSat, all they do is artificial intelligence.
Wow.
Okay. So that's the other thing that's going on in the background. Because we're getting all this information fed back to servers, we're getting masses of data, which is great, but it's what you do with that data. How can we better help customers? So what we're playing about with, and this is probably going to happen within the next couple of years, roughly, don't hold me to it, predictive maintenance, be able to tell people about things that are going to go wrong before they go wrong. Yeah. It's going to change our world because it'll go from being less of a situation of, that's gone wrong, get yourself to site, we need this dealing with, to this is going to go wrong, or there is an issue, it's not made the system fall over yet, but you need to go to site and have a look at this. So for example, let's say CHV unit, we've got a water flow issue. I can see from the temperature of the refrigerant going on and off the coil, I'm not doing such a good job of moving the energy the way I should be. I think there's a water flow issue. Hasn't fallen over, go to site, go there, right, okay, let's switch the unit off, take the strain apart, it's full of dirt, right. The handy thing is the system didn't stop working. We just went there and did a bit of preventative maintenance. So that's much easier to plan. And the outcome for the customer is the perfect outcome in that the kit just works.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't the customer expect that?
And this is in, when you're dealing with commercial buildings, disruption costs hundreds of thousands of pounds. If you have to shut down a campus, an office building.
It's almost getting to the point it's just not acceptable. And we want to, that's possibly a strange way to say it, I want to encourage that attitude. Yeah, because then that feeds into, let's do preventative maintenance and that side of things. But also, from a kind of like, from our perspective, we can also keep analysing this data because our product is always going to need to keep on improving. So I've got this wonderful data where I can sit there and go, here are the bits that are really great. Here are the bits that we can even do better with. Because one of Mitsubishi Electric's attitudes is changes for the better. That means you've got to keep moving forward. If you stand still, you're going backwards. Yeah? So you've got to keep on improving. But with this, we can actually highlight, go, look, it's really obvious. Yeah?
There's I want to touch now on, bring you back to sustainability actually, and there's no doubt, and from all the case studies we've talked about and the innovations, that you are leaders in that low carbon, heating energy generation. That's that's no difference about it. It has a huge impact on how we're retrofitting our commercial buildings, how even we're building the new ones as well. But what I really admire about Mitsubishi Electric is how sustainability is really ingrained in everything that you do. You really do sort of walk the talk, and you've talked about that in terms of taking that proactive lead in embodied carbon and being really transparent with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd love to touch on also where you are with that circular economy side of things as well, and the sort of practical steps you're taking on that side of things.
So we're all about that whole life cycle. So it isn't just about taking responsibility for getting that manufacturing correct and trying to reduce the carbon involved in that, but it's also about end of life. How can we get involved so that when that heat pump does come to the end of its life, that we recycle it correctly and try and recover as much as we possibly can. So we did a nice little bit of a case study on a site quite recently, where the heat pumps were taken from site, new heat pumps were getting fitted. We followed those heat pumps to the recycling side of things that we're involved with, and we went through the whole process, how the unit's broken down, how the different components are taken off them, and how it's all recycled. I think it was getting towards 80 to 90% of that product was getting recycled to the point where it could go back into the manufacturing process. Right. So it was bigger than we expected. So it's a lovely process to go through. It's nice to see how much can be dealt with. But also, it's about responsibility. Especially when you think about some of the refrigerants. We talk about changing refrigerants so they have lower global warming potential. Global warming potential is only an issue if the refrigerant was to leave the system. Now, we have very low failure rates as far as leaks go on the hermetically sealed systems. Very low. However, at the end of life, that refrigerant will be coming out of that system. And what we really don't want to do is have that going back to atmosphere, because that defeats the whole object of what we're trying to do. So that's probably the most important bit for me, is that refrigerant being taken out and recycled correctly. So that's usually involving it being broken down into parts. Potentially being reused again.
So how does this work in practical terms? Do you, if someone's got one of your systems from 18 years ago, it's coming to its end of life, and and they're upgrading with yourselves, do you do that take back scheme? Or is it?
Yes. So they get involved with, give Mitsubishi Electric a call. They'll speak to their account manager, and we'll start a conversation about how we're going to get that product from there back to our warehouse.
Oh wow!
We then collect them all together at the warehouse, because one of the things we're also interested in seeing, if it's come to the end of its life, why?
Okay.
Why is it? Why have we said this is the end of life for this unit? It could be as simple as we've got something better. Great, wonderful. We're going to fit this new heat pump because your new one's more efficient and my running costs are going to be lower. It could also be something's gone wrong with it. If something's gone wrong with it, we want to know. Even if that unit's, say, 25 years old, I still want to know what's gone wrong with it, because that's valuable information for us. So we collect them all together, take records of what's going on, and then we'll send them off to the recycling centre. But not always. There are some units that come back, say, let's say it's 10 years old, and I might be going, okay, what's actually gone wrong with the unit? Replace that bit. I'm going to sit that back into a stock ready to go back at the door. So that might be going out to a job where, for example, something's happened on site, something's gone wrong with the unit. Let's say something like there's been damage to the unit, and let's say the fan's gone wrong or the coil's gone wrong or something like that, where it's actually been damaged on site. We can take that unit out, take this unit here that I've already done repair work on enough to I know it works, and replace on site. So there's a ways of doing things, because what we're very aware of with the heat pump side of things, a lot of the companies that are involved in doing heat pumps aren't necessarily F-gas qualified. So they're not qualified for safe handling of refrigerants. Right. So rather than asking, say, I'm sorry, you can't do the work, we need to get another company involved with this, what we do is say, don't worry, we'll take responsibility for that. Take that back to our factory or back to Milton Keynes and our warehouse. Here's another unit, go straight back in place. Because fitting that heat pump doesn't involve F-gas qualifications. Because there's a little amount of refrigerant inside the system, and all they're doing is water connections and electrical connections. So it's about being thoughtful and looking at the type of customers we've got.
It's obvious, from our conversation, that Mitsubishi Electric are really taking a leadership position on this. I'd love to get your opinion on sort of how do we get this more mainstream across the industry, sort of what needs to happen. And I know you pretty sat there and go, well, we're doing it. So, but I think part of leadership's about bringing people on that journey as well.
And I'm going to be honest with you and say Mitsubishi Electric's not great at yelling. We're not. We love the idea of word of mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's a better accolade you can have than someone else saying, it's been awesome, it's been great, we think you should do the same thing. I think it's become a bit of a slow burner in the UK.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few different reasons for that. This for example, let's say, key exchange. That's going to grow.
Yeah.
They've got their head around it, they're happy with it, good outcomes, they're going to keep doing building after building after building. And then other companies are going to be looking and going, right, that's a really big site. Has it worked for you? Yeah, what stumbling blocks you had? Right, okay, we can do that. So that's how it grows over time, but that still makes it quite slow.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we have some limiting factors in the UK. One of the limiting factors is that our electricity prices are still artificially high and our gas prices are artificially low. That's not helpful.
No.
I'm sure that's going to change over the years. I can see what the government's trying to do. The other thing is that I'm going to be honest with you, we're really good at being innovators in the UK. I think we're really good at those ideas, brand new inventions. We've always been very good at. What we're not very good at doing is being guinea pigs.
Right.
Yeah, we need more guinea pigs. We need more people to take a chance and go, actually, this does work.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like yelling at the wall for me at the moment, going, for me, when we developed the first one, I was literally yelling, going, why isn't everyone doing this? You put 1 kilowatt in, you're getting 4 or 5 kilowatts out of this. Why isn't everyone else seeing this and jumping at it? But the realization that everyone else is, right, we'll see what happens. I want to see what's going on. But I can see this nice gentle growth going up and up and up. And we've gone from that part of the curve that's nicely shallow to that upward trajectory is happening already.
Yeah.
Because we're seeing it in the way the sales are working.
Yeah.
We're getting to the point where we're going, that's great. Can you ship some more across to us? Why? Because we can't keep up with them as they're going in. They're going in one door and out the other.
Yeah.
So it's a good position. But at the same time, we're seeing that big growth, especially on the commercial side.
But I think also from our conversation, I agree. I think the demand is going to increase rapidly.
Yeah.
But what we need to be very careful of is that we're installing it in the right way.
Yes.
And I think that was, I think if people can take one thing from this podcast today, I think that's the importance of involving, suppliers like yourself right at that specification level.
And we'd love it if everyone was wonderfully highly educated on heat pumps and knew everything about them. I just don't think that's fair to the industry. I'm going to be honest with you, I've been trying to influence in other ways. So I had a nice, lovely sit-down chat with some people from Chartered Institute of Building Service Engineers, specifically the guy who's involved in their training side of things. We did actually a little podcast that he's using for training.
Brilliant.
So they're being on board with it, but that's just one bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's to turn around and say everyone should just know what they're doing. That's not fair. Lean on us. Yeah. Come back to Mitsubishi Electric and say, here's a problem and let's come up with solutions. Because then everyone just gets a win-win situation out of it. Yeah. Everyone just gets what they, I'm a great believer in Mitsubishi Electric. We are a solutions provider. The knock-on effect is I sell kit, but it's a knock-on. It's not the main bit, if that makes sense. I know it's a weird thing to say to the manufacturer, but getting the solutions right is what leads to that ongoing relationship rather than the one-off sale.
Yeah. No, and I agree. And I think, those case studies that we've gone through has just shown the importance of that as well. Ben, we always finish the podcast on one question, and it's always about sort of highlighting some people that maybe have inspired or had a real positive impact on you and during your career. And I know there's some amazing people at Mitsubishi Electric, but you probably also come across some amazing people on all the projects that you've gone through. I just love to sort of maybe it's your opportunity just to highlight 2 or 3 people that maybe had that impact on you.
It's interesting now. So for me would be a gentleman called Donald Dorr, who is with Mitsubishi Electric, is now involved in European product development side of things, is in charge of Europe side of things. To have that foresight to go, I know this is new, I know this isn't what the rest of the industry does, but how can we help the industry understand how much of a difference this is going to make? Because it does take somebody with a good level of understanding, intelligence, but also a bit of risk. You know, you're about to tell somebody to spend a lot of money on research and development, and there will be people in the background going, this had better work. You know, what you're doing here, this could cost us a lot of money. If it doesn't make it, what's going to happen? So, yeah, they're some of the inspirational people for me.
Brilliant. Thank you.
So thank you.
No, thank you for coming on today. I think it's been really inspiring.
Thank you.